Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Vince McMahon? He is the topic of the Netflix documentary series titled Mr. McMahon. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Vince McMahon was born on August 24, 1945, in Pinehurst, North Carolina. His father, Vincent James McMahon, separated from his mother, Victoria, when Vince was young. When Victoria remarried, Vince was allegedly mistreated by his stepfather. When Vince was 12 years old, his father re-entered his life. After working as a traveling salesman, Vince graduated from college in 1968. In 1969, he went to work as an announcer for his father's professional wrestling promotion business called Capital Wrestling Corporation. At that time, the professional wrestling business was regional, and his father operated in the northeast of the United States. In 1982, Vince purchased the business from his father and expanded across the country. At this time, the company was called the World Wrestling Federation, or WWF. Vince was able to attract wrestlers who referred to themselves as talented, which helped the company grow quickly. For example, in 1984, Vince recruited Hulk Hogan, who became incredibly popular. In 1985, Vince conducted the first WrestleMania, which was a pay-per-view event. It was a massive financial success. The advent of WrestleMania was a major boost for professional wrestling, and the size of the audience increased dramatically. There have been 40 WrestleMania events from 1985 to 2024. During the 1990s, Vince entered the WWF as an evil character called Mr. McMahon. In various storylines, he would have conflicts with various wrestlers as he played a tyrannical, greedy, and power-hungry boss. In 2002, after a trademark dispute with another company, Vince's company changed its name to World Wrestling Entertainment. 9 years later, this was changed simply to WWE. Over the next several years, Vince consolidated his power in the professional wrestling business. At the time I'm making this video, his net worth is somewhere around $2.5 billion. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On June 17, 2022, Vince stepped down as the CEO of WWE after troubling allegations were made public in April. He was the target of several sexual misconduct accusations from various women. Ultimately, the WWE said that between 2006 and 2022, Vince paid over $19 million to make sexual misconduct claims disappear. Vince returned to the company 6 months later, but resigned again in January 2024, one day after a former employee named Janelle Grande filed a lawsuit against him. Here is a summary of Janelle's allegations in the lawsuit. In March 2019, Janelle was in a vulnerable position in her life. She was unemployed, and her parents had just died. Knowing that she was looking for a job, a friend connected her with Vince McMahon, who seemed enthusiastic to help her. During meetings to discuss potential employment with WWE, Vince greeted her in his underwear, touched her, and revealed intimate details about his personal life. Vince told Janelle to keep quiet about their closeness, warning her that, while he protected loyal people, he had an attorney who could deal with troublemakers. Eventually, he pressured Janelle into a sexual relationship in exchange for a job as an administrator coordinator in WWE's legal department. Later, she was transferred to the talent relations department as a director and promised a promotion to vice president. I find it curious that WWE would have a talent relations department at all. It must not have been a busy place. Through the course of the relationship, Vince's demands became increasingly depraved. He coerced Janelle to have sex with him and other people, sometimes at WWE headquarters. He shared explicit images of her with other employees. During sex, he restrained her, defecated on her, and aggressively deployed sex toys. He referred to the toys using the names of WWE wrestlers and performers. Eventually, Vince's wife found out about the affair and put an end to it. Janelle was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for $3 million. After paying $1 million, the allegations became public, so Vince stopped further payments. At the time I'm making this video, Janelle's lawsuit has been temporarily put on hold. The Department of Justice requested that she do so pending their investigation into the allegations against Vince McMahon. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Throughout his career, Vince has been involved in several controversies in addition to the allegations made by Janelle Grant. For example, in 1994, a former referee, Rita Chatterton, accused Vince of conducting an assault of a sexual nature against her in 1986. She sued Vince in December 2022, and the case was settled that same month. In 1993, Vince was indicted for allegedly supplying steroids to wrestlers. He was found not guilty after a trial that took place in 1994. It was later revealed that if he had been convicted, it would have been the end of the WWE. In 2006, a tanning booth attendant in Florida accused Vince of sexual harassment. And in 2022, a tanning spa manager in California said that Vince conducted an assault of a sexual nature against her in 2011. These controversies appear to establish a pattern of bad behavior on the part of Vince. This brings me to item number 2. Janelle Grant's lawsuit included screenshots of text messages which appear to support her argument against Vince. For example, Vince wrote, quote, "I am the only one who owns you and controls who I want to blank you," unquote. An attorney for Janelle suggested that the documentary series on Netflix about Vince only scratched the surface as far as Vince's horrific behavior. Vince's legal team said that Janelle Grant's lawsuit was meritless and represented the height of hypocrisy. According to them, discovery in the case will reveal that Janelle sent Vince explicit images. Furthermore, she allegedly sent text messages, which, among other things, indicated that Vince was her best friend, she was in love with him, she wanted to have rough sex with him, she wanted thousands of dollars for clothing, plastic surgery, and other gifts, and she desired to continue seeing Vince even after signing the non-disclosure agreement. There is no way to know who is telling the truth or what will happen with the lawsuit. On one side, people have argued that Vince could be a sadistic and disturbed individual who took advantage of someone who was in a vulnerable position and just looking for a job. Some of his alleged behavior points to a lack of control. For example, the lawsuit states that when Janelle complained about the overuse and improper use of sex toys, Vince responded, "Sometimes I just get carried away." On the other side, some have argued that Janelle was an adult who entered an arrangement with Vince. This was consensual. She understood that she was exchanging sex for money and other things of value. Maybe Janelle is simply angry because she was rejected after the affair was exposed. Some of the details in the lawsuit look like they were included simply to embarrass Vince, like saying that he named the sex toys after wrestlers and performers. Does naming the toys really make his behavior any worse? Regardless of who prevails in the lawsuit, Vince's reputation was seriously harmed by the allegations. People now think that something just doesn't smell right with Vince. This is understandable considering how the lawsuit mentioned his unusual defecation behavior. Item number 3, what do I think of the Netflix documentary series, Mr. McMahon? The documentary contained hours of interviews with Vince, his family members, acquaintances, business associates, and others. Some of the people were quite well known, like Hulk Hogan and Dwayne Johnson. Most of the film is really about the history of professional wrestling and WWE. It is much longer than it needed to be. There were a lot of details contained in the series. Clearly, the documentary was supposed to have a positive tone overall, like praising Vince for being a creative promoter and revolutionizing the industry. Vince probably agreed to participate in the documentary because he thought it would amplify and memorialize his legacy. The accusations that came out in 2022 derailed this plan and changed the tone of the documentary to accommodate the nature and gravity of the situation. Vince pulled out of filming when the accusations came to light. He could not have disappeared any faster if he had been tossed out of a ring. His prior alleged bad behavior was mentioned several times in the documentary, so the new allegations shouldn't be overwhelmingly surprising. Even so, the unexpected drama makes the documentary feel half-baked, like it was interrupted by the allegations and simply could not pivot fast enough to thoroughly cover them. Furthermore, the new allegations have not yet been resolved, so there is no answer to report. The film is really about the nature of Vince's legacy, but it ends with a big question mark. This doesn't necessarily mean the documentary is without value. Fans of professional wrestling may like it because it contains a lot of details about the history of the industry. Another possibility is that all the details will make it boring. Like, these are stories that professional wrestling fans have seen many times. There wasn't a lot of new information. People who are not fans may find the film packed with details that are not really well connected to Vince himself. It's not clear who the audience was supposed to be for those old and tangential stories. Item number 4, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Due to his father's involvement in the sport of professional wrestling, Vince became connected to the industry. Professional wrestling is kind of like a traveling performance, which touches on themes of good and evil. There is no true wrestling involved, rather it's there to tell a simplistic story. People may choose to watch the sport as they would well-known theater productions like South Pacific, Fiddler on the Roof, or The Phantom of the Opera. One could think of wrestling like The Lion King, except where the characters get hit with folding chairs. Whereas theater had a well-defined audience who existed for a long time, professional wrestling was still trying to find its way when Vince took over his father's company. Vince grew the audience for wrestling by pushing the boundaries of what was socially acceptable. He wrote nonsensical, sappy, and tacky storylines, emphasizing absurd and dramatic themes. The shortcomings of his writing were only amplified by the terrible acting of the wrestlers. Somehow, this combination made the sport appealing to many people. Perhaps to satisfy elements of an alter ego, Vince inserted himself into the productions as Mr. McMahon. In character, he behaved in a way that would never be acceptable anywhere else. Was this an outlet for dark desires? Was this just bad acting, as usual? There's no way to know, but it left people wondering who was the real Vince McMahon. The documentary failed to answer this question because the alleged bad behavior of Vince threw them a curveball. There is, however, another way to look at this. Maybe the film achieved its goal after all. Maybe through the chaos they found the answer. The real Vince McMahon is unpredictable and polarizing. One never knows what to expect when dealing with him. To some people, he is a marketing genius who revolutionized professional wrestling forever. To others, he is a monster who was reckless, lacked empathy, and demanded sex. The ridiculousness and turbulence of professional wrestling are reflections of Vince McMahon. By looking at the industry as a whole, one can see the inner workings of his mind. People are left to wonder if Vince is a visionary or villain, a man who changed the face of wrestling, or one who wrestled with his own demons. Perhaps the only wrestling match Vince could not dictate the outcome of was the one with himself. Those are my thoughts in the case of Vince McMahon. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.